Hello there, kings, queens, and everyone in between. How are you all doing? If you've somehow stumbled upon this video, it means you're probably looking for something regarding what life is like with one leg. So if this is something you're interested in, I'm happy to share a little bit about my own life, my own experiences. So come with me, come one, come all, on a walk in my shoe. Hey there everybody, and thank you for checking me out. My name is Mikey, and I wanted to make this video to talk a little bit about what my life has been like as an amputee. Specifically, I have been a left leg above the knee amputee since I was very, very, very little. And I figured why not let my first video that I've actually put out onto YouTube, regardless of what I actually end up doing with this channel, if anything at all, to be something personal and just to kind of get my thoughts organized and put this out there, whether this is something that you're just curious about or whether you might actually be somebody who either goes through something like this yourself or you are somebody who maybe knows somebody that's gone through this. Now, I don't plan on going into a lot of depth on any particular subject. I'm gonna try to purposefully leave this as more of a summary in case I ever do decide to take this another step further and go into detail on more specific topics. So my goal here is just to talk a bit about how I got from A to Z, so to say, and how I got from where I was to where I am now and what my life is like at a very superficial surface level. So let's go ahead and get started. So the first question I always get asked, and when I say always, I mean like almost literally every day if I'm actually out and about, and that is, you know, how I quote unquote lost my leg. So I was born without a tibia, and for those of you that don't know, the tibia is just basically a large bone in the lower part of the leg. So yeah, I had a malformed tibia, so to say. And that resulted in a few surgeries. I know I had an initial one at a few months old, and then there were certain follow-ups to that over the next 2 years or so. And as a result, by the time I was about, somewhere between 2 and 3, I was learning how to walk on a teeny tiny prosthetic that I basically, my earliest memories that I actually have, I don't remember, really anything from that period of time. I just have those early memories of hopping and walking around. I was able to walk pretty proficiently on my prosthetic at a very young age. And from the earliest I can remember, I remember not loving the prosthetic. I didn't like it a lot. At least I have a lot of memories of taking it off intentionally. And this makes sense. I think that when I was really young, I didn't really quite know how to regulate the way it felt and the way it fit. So for that reason, I think that was why I was tempted to put it off a lot. And I'm sure it was difficult as my growing body was adapting to it. So, but I remember hopping a lot. So from a very young age, I was very proficient on balancing on one foot. I scurried around a lot like a little animal, which was fun. And at school, I remember very vividly having my crutches a lot. And from the best of my recollection, I believe that was because I just simply didn't like having the leg on. It just didn't feel comfortable. It felt itchy. But I do remember having my crutches just sprawled on the ground, just anywhere. So definitely a tripping hazard for young children, which was great. I don't remember having any major, well, scratch that. I do remember having difficult, obviously there was traumatic experiences I had, but people will ask me all the time, what was it like to grow up that way? And, was life difficult? Was it hard? And the answer is yeah, but I mean, I had a good childhood, and so, I was very fortunate, and it wasn't all misery. I mean, I was a very happy kid overall. I was very much in my own head, and I had difficulty making friends, I think, and relating to other people, and I don't know if that was 100% due to my difference. I think a lot of it was just, I definitely was that old soul type of kid, so to say. I wasn't the kind of kid that really socialized with a ton of kids at school. Like, I had difficulty relating to others, I think. But I definitely loved learning. I mean, I was definitely into books and reading, and I loved being in school, and I loved learning from the adults and just engaging in the activities. I just didn't really like the social stuff that came with school. So maybe the opposite of a lot of other kids. And I do remember there were obviously mean things said to me, but I also said mean things to other kids too. So that's just childhood and growing up and learning to socialize in society. So I can't say that I had a really, really difficult or traumatic experience growing up. There were definitely difficulties with, my one leg, and there were times that I remember being in the nurse's office regularly if I was having issues, like with my leg in some way, shape, or form. I do remember that. I don't know how much of that was actually genuine pain or how much of it was avoidance, because I definitely was a frequent flyer to the nurse's office for a few years, coming and going. As I aged, I grew to like wearing my leg, and I guess I shouldn't say I should just say I never wanted to not have it. Crutches are difficult because you don't have use of your hands, as you can probably imagine. So by the time I was in middle school, I don't think I once, even like literally, I don't think I even once went to school without my prosthetic leg since that point. I think the last time I ever went to school without my prosthetic on was elementary school. And I think some of that just has to do with independence and wanting to, have as few supports as possible. And from that point on, I mean, my life was pretty average. Middle school sucked, of course, does for everybody. High school kind of sucked for the first half, and then it got better for the last part of it, I would say. Early adulthood was a very tumultuous time, as it probably is for a lot of people. It was like a lot of major ups and a lot of major downs. And as it pertains to my prosthetic, I think with my experience having one leg, but I had a period of pretty obvious weight loss, and I slimmed up a lot in a short amount of time. And that was really just because I was old enough, by that time I was 17, and I was a bit cognizant of wanting to eat better and not eat complete junk food, and I wanted to start becoming more active because I was almost an adult. I started having those more mature senses of my own self, and I wanted to improve aesthetically and physically the way I looked and felt. And so I remember going through this period of a few months, and I have the photos to so that I can see it starkly now. But it was between January and May of 2006 that I dramatically changed my body shape. And for any average person, that might just mean getting some new clothes and moving on with your life. For me though, I neglected the fact that my prosthetic now no longer fit me appropriately. And so over the course of that few months, I got used to wearing a prosthetic that was dramatically small. And I was putting so much weight on the bottom part of it and not really caring so much to get that taken care of, and being a procrastinating, essentially young adult that was prioritizing other things in life. And by the time I went to college, I just had the craziest first semester, that's a whole other story. But a few months into my first year of college, I developed a staph infection in my residual limb, and I got sent to the hospital. It was literally during winter break, during Christmas time, and so this, of course, sucked completely. And I had fluid drained out. I had stitches all of a sudden, and I now couldn't wear my prosthetic leg, and it was a whole thing. So that took me weeks to recover from, and I even had a PICC line in my arm that was injecting antibiotics, so that wasn't fun. And it was right after that of course I got a well-fitting prosthetic leg, and that was the jumping point to me dramatically changing the way that I was living. Now I did go through some ups and downs, and again that's a whole other story, but long story short, I did basically become more, I prioritized activity and not letting the disability essentially stopped me from doing what I wanted to do. And at that time, that meant getting into hiking. I got into riding a bike. I got into like biking in the city. At this time, I actually lived in San Francisco for 2 years. I got into going to the gym for the first time and learning how to basically do all of that, which is a lifelong habit that has stuck ever since then. I've always been into trampoline, so that's been like one of my favorite things, and I had planned to talk about that anyway, but trampoline is just one of the things that I always did. I don't do it enough anymore. Now, about my life currently, because that's of course jumping from early all the way to now, things are very good. I mean, if I had looked back 10 or 15, well, maybe not 10, let's say 16 years or more before now, I wouldn't quite have believed where I went from where I was to where I am now. And I do want to show a little bit about what my leg looks like and kind of how it functions and how I wear it in a sense. I will say that since I recorded this video, because I did do this like a week or two ago, I have gotten a new cover. It looks essentially the same, but you know, just newer and not torn up. So I'm happy the way my leg looks right now. Okay. So where do I start? So this is what it looks like up front. I just kind of chose this position to start off with. I'm due to get a new cover, so what you're seeing right here with the front part, let me sort of get this down a little bit farther. There we go. So yeah, this front part, I get these covers. I prefer the black over the kind of the traditional quote-unquote skin tone because they don't really ever match how a real person looks, and of course those are going to fade over time, as will these. But I don't know, I like the neutral color with black. It fits my personality a little bit better, and so I've been doing this for, gosh, I would say upwards of 10 years now with this color. So I'm going to go ahead and take it off. So the way that mine works is, well, actually before I get into that, you can just kind of see the cover. So I'm going in a few weeks to get a new one because this bad boy has been, I think this one's been on me for like 2.5 years. So yeah, this takes a lot of abuse. So you get the cover up here that not quite so close, you know, it can't get as big as my thigh over here, but it gets to be a good size. So here's the top part, there's the bottom part. You can kind of see the innards over here, which we'll get to. Here's that part of the back for the bottom portion of the cover that's really just worn out. So I'm looking forward to getting that new one in about 2 weeks or so. So I'll go ahead and take this off, take this bad boy off, take this sock off, and typically this has like a nice Velcro strap in the back to kind of get undone, but as you can see, time has taken a toll on it. Oh, plus I also forgot to mention that I got a new knee here a while ago, and this is a thicker knee. This is well, they used to be called, so this knee right here used to come from a company called Freedom Innovation, but they got bought out. I'm not sure exactly who bought them out, but it's called Proteer now. I don't know if that's the name of the company that bought it out or if that's just what the name is now. And yeah, so I got a few little weird things going on over here, so I'll kind of get a little close to show this. This sock, right? This is just a cut sock that I did. That's just to hold in this little tube right here. So what this does is it connects to the top part in the socket, so the part that I sit myself into, and it just basically pushes air out. So each time you step, there's like a little pump down here at the bottom that pushes air out through the foot. There you go. You can kind of see the little tube. Well, maybe you can see it, I'm not sure. Out through the foot, just so you know you don't hear much of anything when a little bit of air is getting squeezed out, just to kind of prevent bubbles from forming up here. Nothing fancy to see in here. It's just a hollow space with that little teeny hole at the bottom that I mentioned where air escapes from. You can barely even feel it. But I don't know, there's all kinds of ways that sockets go on. And what I am wearing right now is this, and the sock is a little tattered up because I have a few of these over time too. So yeah, this sock right here just contains a little ring that basically, it has nothing super fancy on it. It's just a silicone ring And then this layer, this is the sleeve that goes over my leg. And if I pull that off, it's just like a protector. So it's just like a silicone protector. It's got kind of a dark color right now. It's not kind of dirty or anything. It's just as over time these kind of they fade. They start as kind of like a clear color. So yeah, they get a little darker over time. I have to wash this at least once, twice a day, depending on what I'm doing. Typically 2 or 3 times, since I work out a good number of times. And yeah, that's it. So there's a little dissection of the leg itself and kind of how I wear it. Now a little bit more in depth about the components of it. So this might be something that would need to be explained in another kind of more thoroughly, but this knee right here, this is the microprocessor knee, and so these days these are pretty common. I don't know statistics on how many people wear a microprocessor knee versus those that wear a traditional mechanical knee. I had always used traditional mechanical knees because that was all that was available, I want to say I got my first one back in like 2008, I believe was when that started for me. So prior to 2008, so when I was like a teenager and younger, was all just the basic spring action mechanical knee, etc. And you've got the knee just basically, it does a lot, kind of not necessarily for you, but it can control certain behaviors of the knee, like the resistance of how fast it swings forward, how much resistance there is when you go downstairs, upstairs, etc. So there's a few settings that you can fix, manually. This one also comes with like activity settings, like for like cycling, etc. So that's a whole other topic. And I control that actually through my phone. There's a little app, so go figure that happens. And then the foot down here, I'm not going to take this foot shell off, but there's nothing too fancy to see underneath this. It just looks like a black, kind of, it's got a little ankle piece that pivots up and down, and then it's got, a pretty simple foot. It looks really thin. It looks a lot thinner than you'd think it does, but it's extraordinarily durable. I think I've had that foot for, at least 5 years, if not more. And the shell, this shell is just a cheap shell. This can get replaced whenever. I've probably replaced this a lot recently. It gets dirty a lot because, like I may have mentioned, sometimes I walk around barefoot, and while that is a little less comfortable than walking around with a shoe on, it's not so bad. So there's what it looks like. So some positives, just to throw out some topics of discussion here of what it's like living now. My skin, in terms of like the prosthetic, like where I wear it, like on the stump, we would say, or the residual limb, my skin has improved drastically over the years, and it's mostly because I just pay more attention to it now. But as you can probably imagine, or as you probably know if you either know an amputee or are one yourself, can be the biggest point of contention with how well the leg actually fits direct contact onto your skin and what kind of system you use. For me, as you might have seen in the video, I use a liner and basically like a suction ring currently, which has, in my opinion, is amazing because it keeps the direct contact of the skin away from the leg itself, resulting in less friction if you are wearing it appropriately and that it fits right. But I rarely anymore have any conditions with like skin, like, ingrown hairs, which will happen every once in a while, or rashes. So that doesn't happen often. And now, given the way I live currently, if I start to see something coming up, or even in the case of like yesterday, like I had been doing so much intense workouts lately, and my fit has slightly changed over the past few weeks. So I'm being a little bit cautious about that, and I'll probably do for another socket in the next few months. But I had to rest all day yesterday, so I told myself, even though I could keep going, I wanted to keep the leg off and just use my crutches, stay at home. It was a weekend, it was Saturday, so I could easily just stay at home and rest, and it was good because I needed a gym recovery day anyway. I'm trying right now to actually bulk a little bit, like I want to get a little bit bigger, which has never really been a major priority of mine. I've always kind of wanted to stay lean, but I do kind of want to start to gain a little bit of healthy mass. So I'm very active. I'm able to stay very active. There's certain activities that I've kind of fallen off the bandwagon a little bit with, which, life happens in time. There's only so much time and resources in life. I don't bike as much anymore. I wish I did. I use the spin bike when I'm at the gym. The gyms that I go to right now, I moved into a new city about a little less than a year ago, and so the gyms that I go to don't really have quite the same spin bikes that I'm used to using, but that is one of my favorite cardio activities. I'm a major swimmer, so that's like my number one sport is swimming. And specifically, people always ask, do you wear the leg in the pool? No, absolutely not. I take it off. I don't use my leg to swim. I do think that some people do, and so I can't judge that. I don't see what it would do for me personally, but I swim pretty rigorously. I've had a little bit of a slowdown the past few months, only because I have a bad right shoulder. I had another dislocation this year. That's a whole other ball game right there. And I do go to the gym regularly. I lift weights and do all that. I'm not a bodybuilder, but I do stay in pretty good shape. That comes with adaptations, obviously. So when I'm at the gym, I do have to find myself regularly making accommodations and adaptations for myself in order to do things appropriately. So there's certain workouts that just don't work for me. So for example, traditional lunges, I just don't have quite the body mechanics to do that in a way that I'm really gonna benefit from. I go about doing things relatively normally, and life is good in that way. There are some negatives still that I'm just used to. So one thing that I have to deal with all the time, and I say this with some humor, but it's totally true, cleaning out leg sweat is an ongoing issue when you're active. And it is something that I'm just used to doing, but oh boy, is it just like a pain in the So when I'm exercising, obviously I'm gonna sweat, and with sweat anywhere else on the body, so whether it be armpits, head, back, my neck, my back, wherever the sweat happens to be, it dries. Leg sweat doesn't dry until you take it off. So I'm constantly having to take the leg off, take the liner off, take the sock off, wipe the sweat, put it back on, put the leg back on, do more workouts, sweat more, take the leg off, take the liner off, take the sock off, do the whole thing. It's not fun. And as you can imagine, it's one of the reasons that I like swimming over biking, because as you can imagine, or hiking even, it's a lot easier to do activities that don't require me to constantly take the leg off and put it back on again. And the only other thing I deal with, which is pretty self-explanatory, is obviously I get some funny stories every here and there from the way people might approach the topic with me. So I don't mind people's curiosity or even with people wanting us to talk about it, it really doesn't bother me. Obviously, sometimes, I'm just in my zone, and it can be, let's just say I don't dislike when people inquire, and sometimes I actually really enjoy it, and I love kind of sharing my experience with people, and especially when people come up and they just need that motivation boost or that inspiration. I don't mind being people's inspiration, PORN, if you know what I mean, every once in a while. But sometimes you just kind of want to live your life and do your thing. Sometimes I get the assumptions, people make the assumptions, like I get oftentimes the, hey young man, are you a veteran, And so I do get that a lot, and I do have to awkwardly be like, no, I didn't serve, I haven't served anybody ever for anything, but that can be interesting, and it's something that I do get sometimes, and people's intentions are almost always, like 99% of the time, are really good, and so usually it's just a quick, oh no, but I appreciate it, thank you so much. So that is something that I obviously deal with, but that's mostly anybody with a physical difference. It's better to ask somebody, I think, in general, if you're genuinely curious, than to do stuff like stare. And I don't know if that happens a lot. I think when I was a child, I was very self-conscious about staring and stuff. I really don't even pay attention to it anymore if it happens, because I just feel very good about myself, and I kind of like being stared at in certain ways, because usually it's just out of just sheer surprise, or people are just curious, and so that doesn't bother me at all. I do find it kind of funny though when people will come up and they won't even ask, like, oh, were you in the military? Sometimes I'll just get the thank you for your service, and I just have to, you're welcome, no problem. It was it was, but I mean, I tell this to my friends, and they just get like shocked. They're like, what if you had it blown up? Like, what if you had this horrible accident and it just re-traumatized you? And I'm like, that's a good point. Yeah, I never thought of it that way, and it kind of realizes that I'm fortunate to have never gone through that. And so those that have gone through that, whether it be military, accident, I think those are really the true sports and the true heroes in that sense, because to be used to one thing and then to have to change your whole way of living. I mean, I've had challenges, of course, obviously, but I feel like I've been able to adapt to mine as they come. It's not quite going through a traumatic experience in some cases that was 100% not your fault. That I think is admirable and just powerful. So serious stuff aside, there are things that I do personally that I value a lot in my life, not just because I'm an amputee, but because I want to be the best version of myself I can be, and I haven't always been, but I want to improve myself as time goes on. I take my overall diet and my exercise routines very seriously. It's something I really, really, really am passionate about. And I think a reason for that is, as somebody who has a disability and knowing others who do have disabilities, I do think that there are a lot of individuals who, like myself, have some sort of physical difference or challenge, who take those kind of aspects of life very seriously, because we know maybe a little bit better than some others what it's like to feel limited, or to feel like you're not quite as secure as maybe other people would be. And so whenever you get an opportunity to be independent and to be mobile and to be active, I want to take advantage of that, and I don't want to take that for granted. And some people might, and some people don't, and you don't have to be disabled to not take your mobility for granted. I think a lot of people pay attention to that, because we're all going to age, we're all going to go through difficult times, and when you actually think about it, being disabled is one of the, let's just say, categories, for a lack of better terminology, that anyone at any time can become a part of. And I think when we acknowledge that, it can provide more motivation to keep going. But also, seeing people who do have a difference, I see people with way more struggles than I personally have. I mean, I'm just missing a leg. I mean, that's it. With the way that things work nowadays, not that the healthcare system's a whole other thing. Let's just get that aside. But modern medicine and technology has done so much for us. And with information that's basically at our fingertips on the internet, we can do so much more now as people than ever could have been done in human history for somebody who has a disability. 200 years ago, as an amputee, life would be totally different. And so I remember that all the time, that I am very lucky, and it's still much different for many people around the globe. So I gotta be grateful for that every single day. So as far as aside from diet, exercise, and just being as healthy as I possibly can, because as an amputee, I have to take that seriously. If I had 100 extra pounds on me, for example, not of muscle, but if I had 100 extra pounds of body fat on me, I know for an absolute fact Okay, well, I don't know anything for an absolute fact, but let's just say I am highly confident, based on the available evidence, that if I had 100 pounds of extra body fat on me, I would be struggling. I would have skin issues. I would not be, aside from just not being as active as I am now, as an amputee, I could be disabled. I might not be able to work. I mean, to be fair, I currently don't work in a field where I would need to be up and moving around anyway, but that's beside the point. I could be in a situation where I couldn't support myself, or I couldn't go out and do things independently. So being in good physical condition is very important to me, and I take that very seriously, because that's something that's 100% in my control. 100% in my control. No excuses. Everyone can be a best version of themselves. You have to prioritize it. Enough of that soapbox, though. That's for another video. So, some other things that I have to deal with on a daily basis, which are not positives, but also not negatives, because I mean, come on, I have prosthetic care. That's not a negative. But because I'm on a computer processing knee, as you probably saw in the video that I stitched in here, I have to charge my leg like all the time. So when the leg dies, like if it literally like dies, like if the charge goes away, I have to it kind of goes into like lock mode in a sense. So I walk a little bit more than I usually do, like Peggy, I guess you can say, a little bit more to the side, lean back. It's I'm not gonna walk quite as let's just say runway elegant. So maintaining the hardware and the device is something I have to pay attention to. With the way things are now, prosthetics they can take a beating. Let's just say that those guys are they're troopers. Let's just say that device takes a lot of work. Cost is definitely something that's always a factor to me. I mean, I'm just fortunate enough that I do know how to navigate the insurance kind of system, and how to select the best plans for myself in order to get the most care for the most kind of bang for my buck. So that's something that's an ongoing struggle, but I feel like I'm at this point currently in my life where it's not the biggest nuisance in my life as it is. I know that's not the same for everybody, and some people are not in a situation where they can be quite as fortunate with that. So I do need to keep that in mind. I do use crutches often at home. I don't really wear my crutches out and about. I probably should. I mean, it's something that I've kind of always told myself that I need to actually get used to, just going out in the world on crutches. It's just when you don't have the use of your hands and having to hold crutches, it just makes life a lot harder. So if I were to go to the grocery store on my crutches and not on my prosthetic leg, it would be probably harder to deal with that. I mean, I would require assistance. I might require one of those carts, because you just logistically, no matter how good of shape you're in, it's really difficult. You can't walk around with crutches and push a grocery cart at the same time. Maybe it's doable, but it's not practical, when you have the ability to wear a prosthetic leg. But when you're at home, just kind of moving around and shuffling, it's kind of nice to give the leg a break and just be on the crutches here and there. So essentially, daily activities are pretty straightforward. So life is good. So, I know that was kind of a superficial video, and I threw in a few little random topics there. I wanted this to be on the shorter side because I know how easy it is to let the time go by, and before you know it, this could be a half hour long, and I don't quite want that to be the case. So I really appreciate it. If this is something that you found anywhere even remotely interesting, or you want to see more or hear more about life as an amputee, what it's like, I have stories up that I can talk about, but this was just very, very, very superficial in every way, shape, and form. So I'd be happy to go more into this, as well as maybe explore my own interests and see what in the world I'm gonna do. Thanks, everybody. And I appreciate the chance to share a little bit of my life with you, and I hope to see you soon. All right, bye-bye. See you later.